Welcome to the Netivot Shalom Shir. Tonight we're going to talk about something that is really relevant and important for our times, both in Israel and in the world. We live in a time of difficulties that, at least in our generation, we haven't experienced. Certainly not in Israel, and really not in the world. And we have these constant people battling one another, and not only trying to convince somebody of what their ideas are, but degrading the other person who doesn't believe in their ideas, and by engaging in what we call Lashon Horah. Lashon Horah is speaking ill about somebody else, degrading the person. And even if what you're saying is true about somebody else, that's still considered Lashon Horah. The Chofetz Chaim, who wrote a major text about Shmirat Halashon, watching what comes out of your mouth, he said that Lashon Horah, this is in his introduction, he says Lashon Horah has led to more deaths and destruction in the world than anything else. And he gives a number of examples. Certainly coming to mind is the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. The second temple was destroyed because of Lashon Horah. People were, because of sinas chinam. What is sinas chinam? Hatred of somebody else. It's based on Lashon Horah. You hate somebody and you say bad things about him. And in this week's Parsha, it's a double Parsha, Tazria Metzora. It talks about a Negoyim. A Negoyim is some kind of a skin plague, erroneously translated as leprosy, but it is not leprosy. It's some kind of a skin problem. And not only comes to the skin, it can also come on houses and so on. It's like, it's like a mold that infects your body, can infect your surroundings, your clothes, etc. And this Netivot Shalom that I've chosen is to highlight the severity of Lashon Horah, to try to raise the consciousness of all of us to avoid Lashon Horah, to avoid speaking about anybody else, and to avoid rechilut, which is another aspect of Lashon Horah, that's tale-bearing, go out and saying something. And again, I'll emphasize, it doesn't matter. People sometimes think, if it's true, it's not Lashon Horah. That is not, in fact, true. If it's true, you're talking about somebody else, it's still Lashon Horah. And some people say, well, this guy is so bad, it doesn't matter. No, that's no excuse for it either. There is absolutely no excuse. And this Netivot Shalom, which starts on page 60 of this book, the book of Vayikra, is entitled Negaim Ba'im Ba'avon Lashon Horah. These Negaim, these skin plagues, these molds, whatever you want to call them, they come from the sin of Lashon Horah. So let's read what he says. He says, Dorshu Chazal, our sages explain, Ala pasuk Zos Tia Torah Metzora. This is the law of the Metzora. That's the second parsha is Metzora. What does that mean? Torah so shall motzi shem ra. The word Metzora can be broken down into two words. Motzi, three words. Motzi shem ra. You're saying bad things. Shekal hamasapir Lashon Horah. Anybody who speaks Lashon Horah, Negoyim boim alav. These Negoyim come upon him. Od Isasham, it's also said there in the Gemara, Manish Tana Metzora, Shemevi Shtei Siporim. After the Metzora undergoes the purification process, one of the things that they bring as a korban, as a sacrifice, is 2 birds. And why 2 birds? It says, Lefi Shanagoyim Boim al Lashon Horah, because the Goyim come from Lashon Horah, Shu Maseh Pitpute Devarim, it comes from just running your mouth. Lefichach, Huzku L'Taraso, therefore Hashem has commanded us to be matahir, to purify herself from this, to bring Siporim, birds, Shemitaptfim Tomi, they're constantly chattering. We don't understand what they're saying, but they're constantly chattering, and that's a symbol that we're not supposed to be doing that. And that's a symbol of Lashon Horah. Our mouth runs away from us. Yesh levar atam, we have to understand the reason. Madua kol chomer isur Lashon Horah, yoter mikol shar isuri lo saseh. Why is the prohibition against speaking Lashon Horah more strict, more severe than any other negative commandments that we have? Ad shikomu chazal shenagoyim boim babon Lashon Horah. So Chazal has established that these negoyim, these bad things, come upon you through the sin of Lashon Horah. Odam Rusham, the Gemara. It also says the Gemara, B'chomros hapagam shel Lashon Horah, the severity of this defect of Lashon Horah, says, Kol hamasaper Lashon Horah ki'ilu kafar be'ikr. Anybody who speaks Lashon Horah is like somebody denying the existence of God. Is it like he's a total heretic? Shulachura. What does one have to do with the other? Anybody who speaks Lashon Horah, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God says about that person, Ein anu v'hu yacholim lador ba'olam. I can't live in this world together with the person who speaks Lashon Horah. Shagam kein tzorach biyu. So these explanation. Madua Lashon Horah gorem she'ein anihu yacholim lador ba'olam. Why is Lashon Horah so strict that God says, I can't live in a place I can't live with somebody who's speaking Lashon Horah? Oda Risham, also it says there, Hamasaper Lashon Horah, Ein Lo Takana. You say Lashon Horah, you speak disparagingly about others, there's no hope for you. There's no hope. There's no way of correcting it. The Tanakh Rabbi Shmuel, and Tanakh Rabbi Shmuel says, Kol Hamasaper Lashon Horah, Magdil Avonos Keneged Shalosh Averos HaChumras. Anybody who speaks Lashon Horah, that sin is greater than the 3 most severe sins: Avodah Zorah, idol worship; Gilei Arayos, immorality; Ushfichas Damim, and bloodshed, murder. B'chol Elu Ha'omrim T'unim Biur V'mach Hamur Kol Kach Isur Lashon Horah Yoter Mishar Isurin. And we have to understand, what do they mean? That Lashon Horah is more severe, is a more serious sin than idol worship, than immorality, and killing somebody. Yesh Lamar Pi Divrei HaGemara Sham B'Arachin. Anyway, the quote from the Gemara there in Arachin. Shem Shilu Mesaper Lashon Horah L'Nachash. The Gemara there compares somebody who speaks Lashon Horah to a snake. What's the story with the snake? She'enu nehena min shichaso. The snake doesn't benefit from biting somebody. The snake will just just bite for no reason. Elakoach hara shabo dochavu lahazik. It's his evil nature of a snake that causes him to cause damage. And in contrast, bilu chayos acheros, other animals, nehenot mitorfam umachma shanasa mitrofos. When they kill something, they tear something apart, it's to benefit them, to eat from it. They don't just kill to kill. Only a snake does that. Kach, similarly, a masaper Lashon Horah, somebody who speaks Lashon Horah, nivdal mishar over avera. He separates himself from any other transgressors of any sins. Shebechol ha'averos yesh la'adam eza hano mechato. Any avera, think of the averas one could do, the sins one could do, the way in which you can go against the will of Hashem. You're usually pushed to do it by something that's going to give you at least immediate pleasure. You're going to satisfy a need for immediate pleasure of whatever kind it might be. So you have that thing pushing you. Therefore, your Yetzer Horah pushes you to do that, and you're going to get at least some immediate benefit from it. Lashon Hakasuv, as it says in Kohelet, "Ben yitron lebal halashon." There is nothing left for the person to speak. Rak machmas kol hara shebo aria osidos. The only reason a person will speak Lashon Horah is because the power of evil makes him do this. Areo kenachash, he's like a snake. He gets no benefit from the bite. And because of that, Uchmru Chazal, the sages made it so severe, Kol Kach as this, Bavon Lashon Horah, made the sin of Lashon Horah so severe. Yoso Nevea Rak Bechelek Hara Sheba it only comes from the evil part of a person, without any mixture of any benefit, because there is no benefit from saying Lashon Horah. Therefore, it is said, Shekal Hamasaper Lashon Horah Ki'ilu Kafar Be'ikr. Whoever speaks Lashon Horah, whoever speaks degradingly about somebody, whoever passes on tales about somebody, whoever speaks to somebody like they're no longer somebody who's a part of, their soul is a part of Hashem, comes from Hashem's throne, underneath Hashem's throne. Like they're not a part of they don't have any godliness in them. Anybody who speaks Lashon Horah without any mix, there's no reason for it, no benefit. And therefore it is said, Shekal Hamasaper Lashon Horah, Kilu Kafar Be'ikr, that somebody who speaks Lashon Horah is like somebody who is denying the existence of God. And God says, He and I cannot live together in this world. Because doing this sin of Lashon Horah means that you're completely underneath the propensity for doing evil, for doing wicked things, doing bad things within you. Old Tom Yesh Bazeh, there's another reason for this. We've said this many times. Bnei Yisrael are children to God. And God said that to us just as we were ready to leave out of Mitzrayim. So B'ni B'chori, my child, my firstborn. God cannot put up with us speaking degrading things among his children, or about his children. Like a parent A parent cannot stand if somebody's going to say bad things about his child. Think of how defensive we get. If somebody says something bad about your child, you don't want to hear that. I mean, if your child is doing something that needs constructive criticism, there's a way of doing it without saying bad things about it. But just put yourself in that situation. Every one of us as parents, if somebody just goes about saying bad things about it, not as a way to try to get you to correct your child, not as a way as a learning experience, but just to give you a dig. Look how bad your child is. So that's why Hashem doesn't want to live with somebody like that. And this is the severity of the defect of Lashon Horah. It says, Lo rak etzim hapagia b'chaveru aidei Lashon Horah. It's not only that you're harming the person that you're saying Lashon Horah about, that you're saying degrading, negative things about, because if it's only about hurting the person you're talking about, then why would it say that there's no takana? You have no way of remedying it. So you can go and apologize to the person and ask his forgiveness. Ella, ikra pagamu klape shumaya. The most serious part of Lashon Horah is what you have done against God, what you've done against heaven. Shigorim tsar lamala, you've caused pain above. Be'etzim ha'avoda shedibur sara al bonav shal kadosh baruch hu, by speaking bad things about God's children. V'gam im yafis es chavero, yitakin es ha'chelek shebein adam lachavero. Even if you could appease your friend will forgive you. Then you've corrected that part of it between yourself and your friend. But lo mataki bagam chamur zeh, you haven't corrected the severity of this because you still have the difficulty you've caused in heaven. The tsar, as you would, the pain that God goes through when he sees our people talking Lashon Horah about one another. I mean, I can't help as I'm going through and reading this, Netivot Shalom, I just can't help but visualize the horrific scenes we've seen here in Israel for the last 15 weeks, where people are protesting, but in the process of protesting, and certainly everybody in a democracy has a right to protest, but you don't have a right to say bad things about somebody. And it's brought down to that level, and I can't help but think about it. And it is so destructive. You can just see in the situation of Israel right now, our enemies, because of that Lashon Horah, think we're weak, and they're ratcheting up their terror threats and attacks on all fronts. To explain that whoever says Lashon Horah is like somebody who's denying the existence of God, is like a heretic. The main part of Amunah, belief in Hashem, trust in Hashem, the Yada Shabani Matem Hashem Elokechem, to know that we, Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, the Jewish people, are the children of God. But Masaper Lashon Horah, somebody who speaks Lashon Horah, who speaks degrading things about another Jew, Shekofer Bezeh Harioka Kofer Be'ikr. He's denying the level that we are children of God, and he's denying the existence of God. And that's why God says, I can't live together with such a person in this world. If a person speaks against another Jew and says bad things about the children of God, in God's eyes, that is the worst sin you can do. Greater than any other sin that is contrary to the will of God. Umida tova meruba. And there's a good quality. Shanachas ruach hagadola, the greatest pleasure to God, biyoter l'fei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, hikashi Yisrael bonav ohavim zeh azeh. The greatest pleasure God can have is when his children, the Jewish people, love one another. Love one another. L'kain, and therefore, v'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. As Rabbi Akiva said, Zeklal Gadol Batorah, this is a great foundation. It encompasses every aspect of Torah. It underlies and underscores every aspect of Torah. Yoter b'kol shar mitzvos, more than any other commandment. The command to love. You remember the story of the person who wanted to convert to Judaism and went to Hillel and said, I'll convert if you teach me the Torah on one leg. And he told him, what is hateful to you, don't do unto another. What is hateful to you, don't do unto another. In other words, you don't want it done to you, don't do it to somebody else. It's another way of saying, you have to reacha kamocha, love your friend as yourself. Mipnei shezeh zeu yesod haTorah, you have to reacha kamocha is a foundation of the Torah. Lasos nachas ruach lamala, to give pleasure to God. Valdas shebiyarnu mashomer chazal. We can explain now what our sages say in Gemara Shabbos. Gedola hachnosis orchim yoter mikabalat pnei hashchina. It is greater to receive guests than to be speaking with God, to have to receive the presence of God. And we learned that from Avraham Avinu, when God was talking to him the third day after his bris milah, and Avraham looks out the tent and sees 3 strangers coming. He says, excuse me, God, I got to take care of these. Achnasis orchim. That's where we learn that from. Achnasis orchim. Achnasis orchim, being welcoming to guests, which is an aspect of loving somebody else, greater than welcoming the Shekhinah. It's like a father is happy, and it's so important for him. So people approach his son, react to his son, meet his son with happy, smiling, welcoming faces. But more than that, to receive himself. So similarly, next to God, it is more valuable to God for people, Jews, to have kiruv, to bring one closer to another in love, and bring that person into his house. You bring in somebody in your house, that's another sign of Kamocha, more important than receiving the presence of God. And he quotes in parentheses, Colossian Tanad Veliyahu says, this is what God said to Bnei Yisrael. B'ni Ohavi, my child, my beloved. Klum chasarti dover shavakish b'chem. I want nothing from you. Uma ani mavakish b'chem. Only one thing. Ela shetiu ohavim zeh es zeh. I want you to love one another. Shetiu mechabdim zeh es zeh, and give honor and respect one to the other. Ubezeh yesh lomar. Mad omru mehari hakodesh, as the Holy Ari said, shekodem tzkal tefillah, before every service, every prayer service, in the morning we say it. Tzorech Yehudi lekabel al atzmo mitzvos v'yahavta kamocha. Before you even start praying to God, you have to say to God, Say to yourself, I accept upon myself to love every Jew, to love everybody like myself. Because at the time of prayer, Zakuk Yehudi Le'es Ratzon V'Rachmim, a Jew has a chance to come close to a time of mercy and a time of when God desires to help us. The way to arouse this mercy and the will of God towards you is through loving your neighbor as yourself. To arouse the love of a Jew because he's a child of God. And with this, he will wake up a nachas ruach, a good feeling above. And therefore your prayers will be acceptable by God. As the sages teach us in Gemara Bava Kama, if you're praying for somebody else, and you happen to need the same thing that you're praying for, you're answered, your prayer is answered first. And the merit of your praying for somebody else, the merit of your showing love for another person. That this where you awaken the love to your friend, it brings joy up above in heaven. And before that, and because of that, the reward for this is that if you happen to need the same thing, you'll be answered first. And the opposite of this, somebody says Lashon Horah, Yotzer Pirut Be Yehudim, he creates division between Jews. Bagorim Bezet Sar Lamala, and he brings pain to God. It's like he completely denies the existence of God. Because of this, Yesh Lomar is said, Gamasha Amr Begamora in Erechin, Matik Nosor Shel Masapar Lashon Horah. How can you remedy? How can the person who said Lashon Horah do? How can he get a remedy? Yasop Torah says you should study Torah. Madu Avkada ask Torah to come on Masapar Mitzrayim. Why is it that the study of Torah can be at least a partial remedy for saying Lashon Horah? The ways of the Torah, the paths of the Torah, are paths of pleasantness. Chol Netivot Shalom, and all its paths are peace. Umevin, Amem B'chet Devorim, Shator Nikne B'hem. You can understand the Chazal teaches there are 48 ways that the Torah is acquired. And a couple of these are Oheves HaMakom, loving God, Oheves HaBrios, loving your fellow human being, B'chulu, and so on. So, Umamido, and on top of all this, Al HaShalom. Top of it is on Shalom, on peace between one another. The Kavanah LeTorah, Heim Aidei Shalom. The whole intent of Torah is to bring Shalom, to bring peace. Koach HaTorah Poel B'Yehudi, the power of the Torah works in a Jew, the Ohev Kol Echad Yisrael. The Torah should teach us, and does teach us if you're serious about it, to love every single Jew. And because of this, HaTorah mitkanet v'gam hapirud shel misaprei Lashon Horah. Torah will help solve the defect of splitting people apart caused by somebody who speaks Lashon Horah. B'nei Shabbos, Utikon lenegoim. And Shabbos itself, speaking about negoim, about these bad conditions that you don't want to get, whether on the body or on your property. Shabbos is a remedy for this. Because I'm reading about Thomas Tikuni Zohar, as it says in the introduction to the Zohar, Manig b'Shabbos, somebody who has oneg Shabbos, has joy in Shabbos, is hapech le minega leoneg, will change the nega, the plague, the bad thing, to oneg, to joy. If you look at the word nega, has 3 letters, nun, gimel, ayin. Oneg, also nega, the plague. Oneg, joy, also has 3 letters, ayin, nun, gimel. So what you're doing, but with Shabbos, you are changing the letters around so that instead of a nega, you have oneg, you have joy. Kamoshi b'vor b'veis Avram, as the base of Avram said, Alpiza inyan hahesker l'shvua. One of the things you had to do with somebody who had a nega of tsaras is you had to take him out of the camp and be in quarantine for a week. Why a week? Ki b'meshach shiva yamim yesh Shabbos, because if you're putting him in quarantine for a week, somewhere in that week, there is Shabbos. B'koach HaShabbos, he takonas leish asher bo hanega. And the power of Shabbos is to help repair somebody who has this nega. But Iba HaKohen, and the Kohen comes to examine you, remember that a person doesn't have a nega, is not diagnosed with a nega, until the Kohen proclaims it a nega. Now, as you might have something that looks like a nega, you have a skin disease, you have something growing out of the bricks of your house. That doesn't make it a nega. It's only when the Kohen comes and examines it and said that's a nega, then it's considered a nega, and from then the 7 days begin. So if the Kohen comes from Ba Kohen Baroa and he sees Shaddai lo nirpa hanega, that the nega isn't healed, Shlo HaShabbos, this one Shabbos of the first week didn't help him. So then what does he do? He makes the person stay in isolation a second week. Kedei shetavar alav od Shabbos, so that another Shabbos should be experienced by this person and be able to turn the nega into oneg. Yesh lamar al pi devorim, and we can say on these things, Madu HaShabbos, Itikun legoim. Why is it the Shabbos is so strong? What's the strength of Shabbos to be able to repair these negoim, these conditions, these horrible conditions? The inyan of Shabbos, because the aspect of Shabbos, who command the Omer Beini v'Emenei Yisrael Osi Liolam. God says Shabbos will be a sign forever between me and the children of Israel. HaShabbos hi hakesher hayachim. Shabbos is the unique tie, unique connection ben Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, between God and Bnei Yisrael. Omer Chazal, and the sages say, Knes Yisrael hu ben zugcha. People of Israel are like the spouse of God. Shein yecholim lahagia liyichud im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One cannot have a close relationship with God elakashu yesh yichud biyahudim beinam levein atzman, unless one cannot have a close relationship with God unless there is a close relationship with other Jews between each and every one of you. Mandomer b'Torah Sovos, as it says, Shator, the expression Banim Lamakom, children to God, Shnikra al Yisrael, that's called about the children of Israel, Urak L'Rabim HaGudim Yachad. It refers only to when the majority are combining together. Bilu yochid eino nikra b'Torah ben. An individual person is not called a child. It's children of Israel, B'nai Yisrael, a unified force. B'chein Torah avinu shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'syachis HaYisrael. The expression, my father, our father, Avinu, our father in heaven. Our father is when Hashem shows mercy to Bnei Yisrael, rak al harabim, b'chalalasam yachad, only when the majority are together. B'chal b'archenu, the language, b'archenu avinu kolanu ke'achad, bless us, our God, bless us, our Father, because we are all standing as one together. Shirat kasher shorod achtus b'Yisrael, nikrim banim. Only when there is a condition of unity in Bnei Israel are you called children. HaKadosh Baruch Hu nikro avinu, and God is called our Father. Einu b'achtus, and if you don't have this unity, harizeh p'gam b'pchinas av b'pchinas banim. That's a defect in the aspect of son and the aspect of the father. The Kivun Shabbos he yichud bein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, since Shabbos is the connecting force, the unifier between God and the children of Israel. Tzrichim lezeh, so we need for this yichud b'Yisrael beinam levein atzmam. In order for Shabbos to be a unifying force of Bnei Yisrael, we first have to be unified amongst ourselves. L'chein, amani es Shabbos. Therefore, somebody who is joyful with Shabbos, esapech le nega leoneg. He switches from a nega to joy. Amani es Shabbos, one who enjoys Shabbos, ainu shemagia oz tisanag al Hashem. He gets to the level, and so shall you have joy with God. Shumikoach ha'achtus Yisrael, that comes from the power of unity of Bnei Yisrael. Koach hayochid, koach hayichud shel Shabbos, and the power of this unity of Shabbos, v'takines hashoresh shel pirud Yisrael, it heals the split of Bnei Yisrael. Shemimenu novea hanega, the split, the separation of people, is what brings about the nega. Therefore, it was established the Shabbos b'Shabbos, to dwell on Shabbos, achim im Yehudim yachad, brothers to dwell on Shabbos, brothers and sisters to dwell together with every other Jew. B'leil Shabbos, on Friday night, Shalosh Shiras, all of Shabbos. Ki yeshiva b'tzivasu b'achdus alvavos, when you're sitting with a unity of heart, mamshicho hashor shchina, you bring down the presence of the Shechina, of God's presence, the yichud, the unity, Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael, of God and Israel, the b'chinas beini v'em in Israel, in the aspect of me and my children, Israel, Osi Olam, a sign forever. Because of this, you have to change those words by your action. Change the three letters of Nun Gimel Ayin, of Nega, to Ayin Nun Gimel, to Oneg, to joy. Yoto me'achad es Yisrael ke'achad. When you do it by making every single Jew unified. And through this you can heal the division cause that brings about the Negoim. And you change it to joy, the Yehudi to a Jew, the Yichud to unify, to a unifying force, Beini v'Bnei Israel, L'taneg al zeh, between me and Bnei Israel, to have joy, to L'taneg al Hashem, to have joy with God. Very important. That's all Netivot Shalom says. Somehow this message has to get out. We have to stop hurting ourselves and hurting God. And as I said, the tools are in our hands. Only we can avoid Lashon Horah. We need to learn. We need to learn how to disagree without nastiness, without calling names. And we have examples. The Talmud is full of disagreements between the great sages, and they're diametrically opposed in many cases. They're as distant as the sun from the moon, yet there was never any love lost between them. Everybody loved each other, and the Torah recognizes, even though you disagree, these are God's words. You're doing things l'shem shamayim. You're making your disagreement not to denigrate somebody else or put them down, not to say Lashon Horah, but to try to get your point across. And that can be done without Lashon Horah. So I urge everybody who's listening to this shir to take this message to heart, and not only take it to your heart, but spread it. Spread it to others. Spread the danger of Lashon Horah. Let's start loving one another instead of hatred. Thank you for listening. I'm going to stop the recording right now.